Hi, I'm Nikki Lowe, and welcome to the Wisdom for Working Mums podcast show, where I share insights and interviews that support women to combine their family, work, and life in a more successful and sustainable way. Welcome to this episode. I'm your host, Nikki Lowe, and today I'm exploring the topic of overhelping. It's an important topic because I see far too many high-achieving women with this issue. Helping others is a good thing, right? You know, we've been told morally, ethically, it's really good to help others. But what if I told you it wasn't? Or it wasn't all of the time? There is a concept known as generosity burnout, which I'm going to be diving into in this episode. I'm going to share how you can keep your helping in a healthy zone to avoid burnout, including the 7 habits of healthy and productive giving. This concept is so important for us as women, as I'm seeing far too many women work harder than they need to in order to achieve in their lives, and it's leading to burnout. And we need to prevent this, as the world needs you and your unique gifts. We need you to have an impact in the world, but in a sustainable way. I love sharing these concepts with you on my podcast, and all the information is 100% free. All I ask is that you subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. In my work as an executive and leadership coach, I see the impact of overgiving on my clients and also the people around them, and the impact can be huge. If you're a woman, then it's likely that you've been raised to be a good girl and be nice and be helpful. And the message we often receive growing up is that it's good to help others, that it's not only like a noble thing to do, but it also will lead to a happy and meaningful life. And it can, but not always, and particularly if it's not kept in check. Because the road to burnout is paved with good intentions. Believe me, I know from personal experience, I had to unpick my own helping habits in order to recover from my burnout. And all too often as women, and particularly as mothers, our desire to help and give to others can become out of balance. Take one of my clients, for example. She's hugely successful in her career. She has a very senior role in one of the world's best known organizations. If I said the name, I guarantee everybody on planet Earth would know them. But she's causing herself pain by overgiving. When members of her team go on holiday, she takes over their work. And I don't mean she's just an escalation point for urgent matters. I mean she literally picks up all of their day-to-day stuff because she wants to be seen as helpful and a supportive manager. And she believes that that's what a good manager does. She also steps in and covers for them on work calls if she feels that hours are unsociable. The company she works for is a US parent company, and often their calls can be in a different time zone. So the UK are doing kind of West Coast calls, and for over here in the UK, that can be unsociable hours. So she often will cover for them on their calls because she thinks that if her team members have got family commitments, she doesn't want them to be negatively affected, which is really noble. But she has a family herself. So she's often sacrificing her own family time to help others not sacrifice theirs. And she's feeling exhausted and overwhelmed, and it's really hurting her, not only in terms of her health and well-being, but also in terms of her leadership and her visibility in the business. We hear about glass ceilings for women in our careers, you know, the metaphor that's used to represent that invisible barrier above us that prevents us from progressing in our careers. But there's also the concept of sticky floors. Sticky floors is a metaphor that's used for kind of how can you progress up the career ladder when you're stuck doing stuff at the level below. So when you're stuck helping mentor a new colleague, for example, learn internal systems. And sticky floors for women happen when they're shouldering the caring or helping responsibilities in the workplace. So how can my client step up and shine in her role if she's constantly bending over downwards to help others? This is hurting her reputation, visibility, and also the respect of her peers. And overhelping can be more subtle than this. Maybe you're always volunteering at work, taking on the office housework. So those non-promotable tasks, which are tasks that really matter in the workplace, but often the recognition and reward's not there. So they don't necessarily benefit you personally. And it's common for women to take on this invisible and often emotional office work. Research shows time and time again that it's the women that tend to shoulder the responsibility for helping with the things that are most valuable, but often least visible in the workplace. It might be running the employee resource group, perhaps mums at work or women's at work with little recognition and reward, or buying the office birthday presents, bringing in the Friday cupcakes, serving on committees, or kind of compiling the work of others, perhaps resolving conflicts among work colleagues, taking notes in meetings, or setting up meetings. We get stuff done right. We do it, and we do it quicker than others. So we tend to step in and help more quickly. Sadly, I see the impact of over-helping far too much in my work with my clients. Often they get their sense of self-worth and identity from helping others. And this can make them become kind of auto-accommodating, that automatic reaction to go and help, and it goes unchecked in their lives. It not only hurts them personally, but it also weakens the systems around them. And what I mean by that is if you imagine kind of a metal chain and you're a link in that chain, and your link is your role and your responsibilities, and each link in that chain is somebody else's role and responsibilities, every time you step up to help other people, you're strengthening their link, which can be a good and noble thing, as we've said. But you have to be aware that you risk weakening your own link in that chain when you do it. You're kind of taking the eye off your own ball. And if your link in the chain gets weakened, the whole chain is at risk. So systemically, we have to think of the impact when we overhelp. Because either you make them helpless because you're always helping them, they become helpless. You become the rescuer and they unconsciously become the victim. That's actually unconsciously the message that we send them. Or you don't allow them to stand in their own difficulty long enough to develop. So kind of the concept of you always tie your child's shoelaces, they're never going to learn to do them themselves. And you know it, we only have a limited amount of energy to expend. And if you're leaking all of yours in service to others, there is little left for what's important to you and your own development. So what can you do about it if you find yourself slipping into superwoman and overhelping? Well, let me share with you the concept of generosity burnout. In January 2017, Adam Grant and Reb Rebel wrote a Harvard Business Review article on the concept of generosity burnout. And in the article, they explored the different types of ways in which we can help and give. They said the first way is being a taker. And takers see every interaction as an opportunity to advance their own interests. And they will run you ragged if you don't protect yourself from them. They act as if they deserve your help and they don't hesitate to impose on your time. The second type is matchers, and they trade favours evenly. They give as good as they get, but they also expect reciprocity. So they will expect something in return. And Grant and Rebel describe matching as transactional. It's kind of a defensive stance. I'll help you if you help me. And it adds less value for both you and others, but it can be helpful if you're dealing with a taker. The third type is self-protective givers, and they're generous, but they know their limits. Instead of saying yes to every help request, they look for kind of high impact, low cost ways of giving so that they can sustain their generosity and they can enjoy it along the way. And the final type are selfless givers who have high concern for others, but low concern for themselves. And they set few or no boundaries, which makes them especially vulnerable to those takers. By ignoring their own needs, they exhaust themselves. Paradoxically, they actually end up helping others less because they just haven't got the energy left to give. In their research, Grant and Rebel discovered that reactive helping, so that's selfless giving, is exhausting, which kind of makes sense. But proactive giving, so that's self-protective giving, can be energizing. So using your strengths, your skills, and your interests to focus on giving where you choose, consciously and intentionally choose to make an impact, is not only likely to be less stressful, but can support you in feeling like you're making a difference. And they say as giving aligns with your interests and skills, it can become less stressful for you and more valuable to others. Rather than feeling pressured to help, you're choosing to help, which is good for you, your motivation, your creativity and well-being. So I just want you to reflect for a moment. Which of those types do you fall into? Are you a taker? Are you a matcher? Are you a self-protective giver? Or are you a selfless giver? I know where I was when I started my burnout journey, and I know where I am now, and I have to be careful where I might slip into. So just take a moment to reflect. But I wanted to share with you these 7 habits of healthy and productive giving. So how can you keep your helping in that healthy zone so that it's productive to you and other people, but it's sustainable and reduces the risk of burnout? In their article, Grant and Rebel share these 7 habits of healthy and productive giving. The first habit is prioritize the requests that come your way. So they talk about saying yes when it matters most and no when you need to. So kind of switching off that auto-accommodating, automatic yes, really start to prioritize them. The second habit is giving in ways that play to your interests and strengths to preserve your energy and provide greater value. So focusing on where you can make an impact and you could do it more effortlessly because it's in your natural preference or natural flow. The third habit is about distributing the giving load more evenly. So this is about not all taking it on your own shoulders, but referring requests onto others when you don't have the time or the skills, and really being careful not to reinforce those gender biases about who helps and how. It was really interesting. My son started going to Cub Scouts and we went along to their annual general meeting. And I tend to be somebody that asks a lot of questions. It's natural. I'm a coach. And I went along to this AGM, and it was the first meeting that I'd ever been to. And they had said that they were looking for a secretary to sit on the board, because I asked a question, and my husband did too. They asked me if I wanted to be the secretary on the AGM and take notes. And actually, I reacted quite prickly to it, because I was like, is that because I'm somebody that wants to get involved, takes an interest, but is it also because I'm a woman? Would they have said that to a man? Because actually, the rest of the board were all men, and it was a woman that was in the secretarial role. And it just made me think, oh God, are these gender biases alive and kicking? The fourth habit is about securing your oxygen mask first. And we know this, but it's reminding you that you'll help others more effectively if you don't neglect your own needs. If you like to help and it's part of your identity, that's great. But we have to make sure that we're doing it from a place of replenishment, not depletion, because if we keep giving from depletion, that's when the whole host of unhelpful, toxic behaviors can start. The fifth habit is about amplifying your impact for looking for ways to help multiple people with a single act of generosity. So it's this one to many, then one to one. So it's about leveraged helping. The sixth habit is about chunking your giving into dedicated days or blocks of time rather than sprinkling it throughout the week. So it's about batching your helping in effect. You'll be more effective. You'll be more focused. It keeps your attention from being dragged in different directions by different people. So it might be, if you want to help, it's like, yep, I have 2 hours reserved on a Thursday afternoon that if you need something doing, I can help then. But if it needs to be done before, I can't. And the seventh habit is about learning to spot the takers and steering clear of them. They're a drain on your energy and your well-being. And it might be that you've already got into a dynamic with these people and thinking about ways of how you can unhook yourself from the dynamic. So either spotting them early, or if you're in there, finding ways to exit that dynamic from them. If, like me, you've been conditioned to believe that being kind and helpful means being available to others 24/7, then perhaps you've fallen into being that selfless giver. And at that end of the spectrum, it's important to know that this has an impact, and often it's not helpful for anyone. So it's not helpful being helpful. I was always told in my systemic work, actually, being helpful is unhelpful. And that's really stuck with me. My intention to help often is unhelpful. So Grant and Rebel argue that it's better to be a giver than a helper. Effective givers make sure that the benefit of helping outweighs the cost to you. And it's about finding ways to give without depleting your time and energy. It's about being generous, but not selfless. Effective givers are comfortable to say no, as they recognise that it frees them up to say yes when it matters most. They know that they can't support others when they're so overwhelmed that it damages their health and well-being. And they know when their good intentions might go wrong. So if you're naturally a selfless giver, you can move to become more of an effective giver by thinking about helping in 3 ways. The first way is about being mindful about how you help. The second way is about being mindful about when you help. And the third way is being mindful about whom you help. And as with any change, awareness is important. If we can start to develop a deeper understanding of when our inner helper might get triggered, and actually resourcing ourselves in those moments to lean back and respond from a more useful place, that can be transformational. I know it has been for me in my life. It's been a real learning curve, and it's allowed me to set boundaries that support me and the people who matter most in my life. And far from feeling like I'm being kind of less kind and less helpful, it's enabled me to feel more compassionate, because it's far too easy for me to go from being the helper to becoming the martyr and then becoming resentful. And actually, that's not a kind and helpful place to be. So I hope these insights on overhelping and generosity burnout have been useful. As always, I love to hear your thoughts. What type of helper are you? And what triggers you into your overhelping? And what can you do to keep yourself in that healthy helping zone? Until next time, take care. If you've enjoyed this episode of Wisdom for Working Mums, please share it on social media and with your friends and family. I'd love to connect with you too. So if you head over to wisdomforworkingmums.co.uk, you'll find a link on how to do this. And if you love the show and really want to support it, please go to iTunes, write a review and subscribe. You'll be helping another working mum find this resource too. Thanks so much for listening.